Hey, upright on the back of the Royal Enfield Classic 650 review that I did on Wednesday. A lot of people are requesting a comparison between the Classic 350 and the Classic 650. Because it would seem, with a lot of people, they're in the market for either of these bikes and they genuinely can't make up the mind which one to go for, the 650 or the 350. And I fully understand that. Because yes, although there are a lot of sort of details and intricacies that are different between the two, the only major difference is power and performance, and not everyone prioritises that. Again, to make it fair, to help you make the choice that's best for you, I've drawn up a list of sort of topics or points of comparison between these two bikes. I'm trying to make it as fair as possible, but obviously, if I'm doing the scoring, my personal opinions are going to affect the scores, so bear that in mind. Now, for anyone that's new to this channel, I own a Classic 350. I've had one for over 3 years now, and I've been riding a Classic 650 for the past 2 weeks, so that's still very fresh in my mind as well. Right, so let's have a look at the way I intend to score it. Now, I have had to change the comparison criteria slightly from what I normally use, because obviously both are the same brand, both have a lot of similar equipment, like tripper navigation, LED lighting, and gear change indicators, that kind of thing, so they would just cancel each other out. So what I've done is I've tried to pick criteria that do represent a difference between the two models. Each model sets off with 10 points for each category and is deducted points accordingly. We have, first of all, authenticity, then performance, then fit and finish, followed by fuel economy, maintenance, comfort, pillion use, roadside wow factor, which I know is an opinion thing and everyone's opinion's different, but I thought it would just make things interesting, followed by price and value for money. Now, obviously, my Classic 350 is 3 years old now. It's not the current version. The current version has had some upgrades, and they will be taken into consideration in this sort of comparison. I won't be comparing directly with my old Classic 350. So, to start off, authenticity, and what I mean by this is authenticity to Royal Enfield's Classic brand. Now, Royal Enfield first introduced their Classic models in 2009, and these were a reinterpretation of pre-1949 Royal Enfield Bullet. Now, bearing in mind that World War II pretty much halted motorcycle development from the end of the 1930s right through until 1949, these were essentially 1930s machines, and that's the sort of ethos and design cues that Royal Enfield used in designing the original Classics in 2009. And we had the 350 and the 500 version, both single-cylinder bikes, the 500 of which has now been discontinued, and presumably the 650 is a replacement for that model, because they don't currently have a 500cc single engine in their lineup. Now, the 350 Classic is, of course, Royal Enfield's new-ish J-Series platform, which was introduced in 2022, although I think the Classic 350 was announced in 21. Now, Royal Enfield were very keen to point out that the J-Series Classic didn't share a single component with the previous unit construction 2009 version, yet it is almost indistinguishable from the original version. It's a very faithful replica of the original Classic in every way. Right from the shape of the side cases, which is very Bullet, to the roll detailing on the edges of the fenders or mudguards, and of course the famous Bullet casket headlamps around, Royal Enfield got every detail absolutely spot on. Now, initially, I thought it was just me. We all have, reasonable expectations that Royal Enfield would put the same level of care and attention to detail into the design and the production of the Classic 650, but they didn't. Now, we know that the new Classic 650 is based on the Super Meteor 650, and the general feedback that I've got from people in the comments is that it's just basically a Super Meteor 650 with a different paint job and a few slight design changes, and I'm inclined to agree. Although it's got a new, bigger and updated version of Royal Enfield's famous casket headlamp surround, the side casings are the wrong shape. They're the ones from the Super Meteor. The mudguards are not as deeply balanced as we would expect from a Classic. The shape of the rear one looks a little bit out, and they've lost the rolled detailing on the edges. For me, and as I say, going from the opinions of a lot of other people as well in the comments, this doesn't have the genuine Classic identity that we all expected. If they'd used a different name for this bike, a lot of people have suggested the Constellation would have been more apt. I think people would have been more accepting of it, but as it stands, as far as the Classic, the iconic Classic goes, it just misses the mark. So, with a heavy heart, I've got to score as follows. With a very solid 10 out of 10 for the Classic 350, and a 4 out of 10 for the Classic 650. Now, this is just my opinion, but I know it's also the opinion of other people. There's no need to get your nose all bent out of shape over it if you disagree. Let's all just agree to disagree on that one. Next up, we have performance. Now, both bikes are both actually fairly evenly matched in the handling department, handling and agility. The extra weight of the Classic 650 really does get lost once you're riding the bike. The only time it does come into play is tight U-turns and similar manoeuvres. The Classic 350 does U-turns, etc. really well. The Classic 650 not so well, but when you go on through the rest of it, the 650 obviously does move ahead. For a start, in the braking department, the Classic 650 is far superior. The brakes on the 350 are adequate. Rear braking is quite weak, as you would expect on a lot of modern bikes, but that's where the 650 really shines. The braking is absolutely spot on. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not sure what tyres they're using on the current 350s, but the Seats on my 350 are pretty good. The MRFs on the 650, again, are better in most ways. It's just that they do have a bit of a propensity for squirming and tramlining on some road markings and seams, etc. on the road. Performance of the suspension, again, I think are very comparable between the two, although adjusting the preload on the 650 is much easier than adjusting the preload on the 350. But predictably, where performance really pulls ahead for the 650 is the 650 has 47 horsepower, the 350 only has 20 horsepower. Acceleration is superior. I would imagine top speed is far superior, and although that kind of performance is important to some people and not to others, it can't be ignored. So the scores are as follows: 5 points to the 350 because of the braking and of course the engine performance, and 9 points to the Classic 650, 1 point knocked off because of the sort of bad habits of those tyres. So, moving on to fit and finish. Now, there's not a lot in this, but obviously the Classic 350 is a cheaper bike, and the standard of finishing is slightly below the newer and more premium Classic 650. But like I say, there's not a lot in it. Now, it could be argued that because the Classic 350 is a more authentic sort of rendition of the original model, it can't be blitzed up too much, whereas Royal Enfield have obviously gone to a little bit more effort with, shall we call it, bling on the Classic 650, with a few noticeably higher quality components. I've got to be fair and, admit that the 650 does come out slightly higher in the sort of quality, fit and finish stakes, but as I say, there's not much in it. So, with the scores, I think the Classic 350 comes out with an 8 for fit and finish and a solid 10 for the Classic 650. The 650, in my opinion, just has, that little edge over all the 350s that I've seen in person. So, moving on to fuel economy. Now, I've just realised that I didn't quote the fuel economy figures that I've experienced with the 650 in Wednesday's review. Sorry about that, but I'm going to give you them now. Now, I did double check these figures. Royal Enfield claims 60 mpg, that's imperial gallons I presume, for the Classic 650. I was getting 71 miles per gallon, and I've got to say, I wasn't trying particularly hard, and I was carrying a pillion for about half of that. Although, obviously, I've got to consider that it does come down to style of riding. I mean, I wasn't really sparing the horses when I was riding it, especially the first couple of rides, but, people that are heavier on the throttle may get nearer to that 60 mpg, but I'm going to go with my figures. Now, the Classic 350 is obviously a lot more frugal, and I've got to say, again, this figure that I'm going to give you is mainly dual riding with a pillion, and that's 91 miles to the gallon. Now, I've heard people say they can get 100 miles to the gallon plus. I don't doubt that, but my figures are the only ones I can conclusively ratify, so those are the ones that I'm going to go with. To keep it simple, I'm working on a premise that a bike that can do 100 miles to the gallon gets 10 out of 10. I'm going to award the Classic 350 with 9 points out of 10 and the Classic 650 with 7 points out of 10. I hope that makes sense. So let's quickly just skim over maintenance. Now, I've worked on both the 650 twin engine general servicing and the Classic 350 engine, so I know them both well. Both bikes have a primary and secondary oil filter, and in both cases the secondary oil filter is a bit of a pain in the neck. Now, on the Classic 350 it's just a couple of bolts to release the strainer, which isn't too bad. On the twin 650 engine though, it requires taking the whole bottom sump plate off, which is a bit of a messing about and a half. Although I should point out that a lot of dealerships don't think it's, strictly speaking, necessary to keep cleaning those secondary filters, and certainly I've never found anything in them. They are more strainers than filters, so it's up to you whether you do it or not. It's your bike. But when it comes to checking and adjusting tappets, the 350 is a simple 2-valve head, so just 2 tappets to check and adjust. The twin though is a 4-valve, so you've got a total of 8 tappets to check and adjust. It basically takes 4 times as long. Other than that, the oil change procedure is pretty much the same, nothing in it. So the scores, if you're going by the book, are 9 for the Classic 350 because of that secondary oil strainer, and a 6 for the 650 because of the classic oil strainer and the difficulty involved at getting at it, and of course the extra tappets that need to be checked and adjusted. Next up is comfort. Yeah, I mean, this is an important one. The rider's got to be comfortable, otherwise it limits how far you're able to travel with your bike. Now, the Classic 350, I've always found it comfortable. I do have the touring seats fitted now, but the original seats weren't bad. The main thing with the J-Series platform is that the single-cylinder engine is very low on vibration. It really surprised me when I first got this bike just how smooth that single is. The 650, however, after 50 miles an hour starts to pick up some high frequency vibration. On top of that, the rider seat is very thin, it's got a very low density foam, you sat bolt upright, and when you're actually sitting on the seat you can feel the seat pan under your sit bones, so that vibration is transferred straight through to your body. So once you get above 50 miles an hour it becomes quite painful. And the construction of the seat gives the rider virtually no support at all. It's quite a poor seat, if I'm honest. Now, a touring seat would, I think, sort this out, but as yet there isn't one available. So I've got to score these bikes as I see them. And again, this is a big complaint that I'm hearing from viewers that own these bikes in the comments section. Now, some people are going to be okay with it, I accept that, but a lot of people so far claim that they are not okay with it, and I had problems with it as a solo rider. In its standard configuration, it is going to severely limit mid to long range touring and travelling. Now, in its standard configuration, the Classic 350 isn't perfect, but it's close. Whereas the Classic 650 leaves a lot to be desired. So we've got a 9 for the 350 and a 5 for the 650. And my apologies for the numbers not lining up, but the titling is refusing to cooperate on this one. Right, pillion carrying ability. Now this is an important one for me. I know it's an important one for a lot of people because they want to take the partners on board with them. And there are some people that say, you know, carrying a pillion is not important to them because they never carry a pillion. Well, the bike's got 2 seats, so as far as I'm concerned, the bike has to be capable with 2 people. Now, generally speaking, although I know it's not considered huge mileage, I generally do over 1,000 miles a year with a pillion on the back of a bike. Now, the Classic 350 doesn't have an abundance of power for carrying a pillion, but it manages perfectly well. I certainly found it doesn't inhibit my style of riding. Also, it has a rear pillion grab rail and the seat is very comfortable. My pillion loves the bike. And as far as I can tell from other commenters, it is highly regarded as a pillion carrier. Now, the 650, on the other hand, does have an abundance of power. You would think it would be, you know, another perfect pillion carrier, but it's not. The seat is very thin and it doesn't have a proper rear grab rail. My pillion struggled with this seat. She managed, but she was struggling. She found the seat unreasonably narrow and those side grab handles actually caused her an injury. Her hand was hurting the day after, and again, I've heard these reports from other people. Again, we don't know whether Royal Enfield are going to sort this out with a touring pillion pad. We don't know, it's not been released yet, so I've got to go with what's available now. It seems to be the fact that this bike is so closely aligned with the Super Meteor that's causing, the pillion comfort issue. But, there's no point having an abundance of power if the pillion doesn't want to ride with you. End of story. And it's a shame because, putting that problem to one side, the 650 is an excellent bike with a pillion on board from a rider's perspective. So I've got no choice really but to rate it as follows. A 9 for the 350 because it probably could do with a little bit more power for most people, and a very poor 3 for the Classic 650 because most pillions, it would seem, simply cannot cope with the narrow seat and the grab rail arrangement. So, curbside wow factor, just a bit of fun this one really. They've both got it in spades, and to be honest I couldn't sort of separate either of them as far as scores are concerned. It doesn't matter where you park up, someone will always come over and talk to you and start talking about the bike and admiring it while you're taking your helmet and gloves off, etc. And it doesn't matter where you've parked it, whenever you come back there will always be a little audience looking at it, eager to talk to you when you walk up to the bike and get your keys out. They are both vintage styled attention grabbers and there's nothing between them. So fair's fair, both bikes get a well-deserved 10 out of 10. So, final category, price and value for money. Now, the base level Classic 350 comes in at £4,619 according to Royal Enfield's website. That's not including any discounts that you might get through individual dealerships. I think there's been a slight increase there since the video I did about a month ago. And the basic spec two-tone Classic 650 comes in at £6,499, so near enough £2,000 difference between them, or just under. Now, looking at this from my point of view, the only real advantage the 650 has is added acceleration and top speed. It's got more power. That's really the only advantage I can see. For me, that's not that important because, I don't break the speed limits. Both bikes will do 70 miles an hour. Both bikes can, easily keep up with traffic. Arguably, the 650 will be a little bit better at that, but there are a lot of trade-offs. The 350 is much more comfortable, so it's going to be better over longer distances. The 350 is also a better pillion carrier because, as far as I can see, until the seating issue for the pillion is sorted out, a lot of pillions are not going to want to ride on this bike. We've also got what I consider to be compromises with the styling, although other people I know are going to see that differently, that's fine. And yearly maintenance is more involved, and so if you're getting it done at a dealer, it's probably going to be more costly for the 650 over the 350. Personally, I wouldn't be willing to pay, an almost £2,000 premium for that. As a practical motorcyclist, I see more disadvantages with the 650 for me personally than I see with the 350. So my scores for the two bikes for price and value for money are as follows. I'm going to give the Classic 350 9 points because I do still think it's a little bit overpriced, and a 6 for the Classic 650 because I think for the extra money that you're paying, for me personally, there are just too many compromises with what you're able to do with it compared to the capabilities of the 350. It's as simple as that. So the final scores for both bikes out of possible 90 points is 78 for the Classic 350 and 60 for the Classic 650. Now really, we shouldn't be too surprised at these results. The Classic 350 has been in development for sort of a decade and a half. The J platform was a vast improvement over the original unit construction bike. My Classic 500, although it has character and I love it, is nowhere near as accomplished as my 350. It's nowhere near as good at carrying a pillion, both for rider and pillion, and it's nowhere near as comfortable. The J platform Classic 350 is an extremely difficult bike to beat or even equal. So, with the new Classic 650 being Royal Enfield's first attempt at it, there was bound to be some compromises between the two. Now, one thing I will say is, anatomically, we are all different. What I find uncomfortable, you may not find uncomfortable. What my pillion struggles with on the back of my bike, your pillion might love. So, in all cases, don't just take this little sort of comparison as gospel. Go out and thoroughly test both bikes before making a decision. You may find that in your case you don't encounter the same issues that I have. But people did ask for my opinion, for my comparison of these two bikes, and I've given it as honestly and fairly as I possibly can. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you would leave a like and consider subscribing to this channel if you're not already a subscriber. It does help out with the algorithm and helps to get my videos out there. and I really would appreciate it. Now, you can help me in other ways via my Patreon page or via PayPal donations, details of which are in the video description down below, or you can just use the super thanks button, which is just below the picture that you're watching now. Not essential, but it is appreciated, and again, it helps me to keep the channel going. I will of course be back next week where we'll have a look at the bear, so until then, please ride safely and I'll see you soon.